I never thought I would see another side of my wife this way.
My name is Shen Yan, 33 years old.
Married for 6 years, my wife Song Wantang is 3 years older than me, the founder and CEO of Horui Technology. When we first met, she had just secured her Series A funding, full of ambition and fire while I was still grinding away at an investment bank. Later, as her company grew bigger and bigger, I simply quit my job to help her manage things behind the scenes, equity structures, investor relations, all sorts of odds and ends. People outside called me the man behind Song Wantang. It sounded like a joke, and I never really let it bother me. That night was a Friday evening. Wantang said she had a business dinner with some investors and told me not to wait up. I curled up on the living room sofa, played 2 rounds of video games, got too tired to keep my eyes open, and went to bed early. My phone ran out of battery, and I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night. I got up to find some water and on my way, wanted to plug my phone in to charge. But on the bedside table, I grabbed the wrong one. I grabbed Wantang's phone. Her screen was lit up, with over a dozen WeChat messages popping up one after another. I hadn't planned on looking. In 6 years of marriage, I had never once checked her phone. She was a CEO with plenty of business secrets, and I respected her boundaries. But that night, the screen was facing me directly, and the preview of the most recent message stabbed into my eyes like a needle.
Boss Song tonight's photo was too beautiful.
I've looked at it several times. The sender was named Lu Ci. I knew him. He came to the company a year ago, working as Wantang's business assistant. 26 years old, fair-skinned, soft-spoken, always buttoning the top button of his suit. Wantang had praised him a few times, saying he was meticulous, more reliable than her previous assistants. I stared at that line of text for about 10 seconds. Then I entered her lock screen password. The password was our wedding anniversary, 1309. The moment the phone unlocked, I was still thinking maybe it was some work photo, maybe a group shot from an event, and the assistant was just being complimentary. That would be normal enough. Then I clicked into her chat with Lu Ci. The most recent message was from Wantang.
A photo.
In the photo, she was wearing a black bikini standing in front of a floor mirror in some hotel room, her body turned sideways, one hand on her waist, her chin tilted slightly upward. A 34-year-old woman who looked like she was still in her late 20s, with a smooth waistline and long, straight legs. She had taken this picture of herself in the mirror, and in her eyes was a kind of unrestrained, reckless smile that I had never seen before. I stared at that photo for a long time, long enough for the screen to dim automatically. I lit it up again. Below the photo was the message she sent, room number 1806.
Don't go to the wrong one.
The time was 11:23 tonight. I sat on the edge of the bed, reading that sentence over and over. 5 times. I recognized every word, but strung together, they felt as foreign as a language I had never learned. Room number 1806. Don't go to the wrong one. My finger scrolled upward. The chat history wasn't very long, but it was enough to piece together a complete picture. Most of Lucis' messages had been deleted, leaving only Wantang's replies still sitting there. Scattered fragments of sentences, like shards of broken glass, covered the entire chat screen. The soundproofing at the last hotel wasn't good. I switched to a different one this time.
You look good in that gray shirt.
Wear it next time. Stop staring at me during meetings. Old Joe almost noticed. My hands started shaking. Not from anger. It was a kind of icy coldness that spread from my stomach to every inch of my limbs. My wife of 6 years, a woman I had known for 9 years, someone I thought I knew inside and out. Song Wantang, the Iron Lady. The perfectionist who would correct you if the slippers at home were even slightly out of place. I simply could not reconcile that meticulous, disciplined image with these suggestive, borderline explicit words right in front of my eyes. I put the phone down, got up, went to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of ice water, downing it in one go. The cold water traveled down my throat and jolted me into a shiver, but somehow it made my mind clearer instead. Back in the bedroom, I used Wantang's phone to screenshot the entire chat history, including that bikini photo and the room number 1806 message. Then I turned on Bluetooth and transferred all the screenshots to my own phone. After the transfer was complete, I put her phone back exactly where it was, face down, just as I had found it. Throughout the entire process, I was unnervingly calm, so calm that even I found it abnormal. I picked up my own phone, opened the photo album, and flipped through the screenshots one by one. With each photo I swiped, another piece of something inside me collapsed. When I reached the last one, the selfie of Wantang standing in front of the mirror, the black bikini, the bold smile, and that line, room number 1806. I checked the time. 0:15 in the morning. What happened next, I remember with perfect clarity. I opened the browser and searched 5-star hotels near Huarui Technology headquarters. The first result was the Park Hyatt, less than a 10-minute walk from her office. I opened the map, checked the room distribution of the Park Hyatt, and then dialed the front desk. It rang 3 times before someone picked up. Park Hyatt Hotel. How may I help you? I said, hello, my friend had too much to drink. She's in room 1806. And I want to go pick her up, but am not sure if I got the hotel right. Can you confirm for me, is room 1806 occupied tonight? The front desk paused for a moment and said politely, sir, per our policy, we cannot disclose guest information, but you're welcome to come directly. If you remember the room number, you'll need a key card to access the 18th floor. I said thank you and hung up. She didn't say it outright, but the meaning was clear enough.
Room 1806.
Someone was there tonight. I sat in the dark living room, clutching my phone in my hand. Outside the window, the city was ablaze with lights, and occasionally the beams of car headlights swept across the elevated highway in the distance. This city had over 10 million people, but at this moment this 140 square meter home felt as empty and desolate as a vast wilderness. I scrolled through my contacts and found a name I hadn't reached out to in a long time, Gu Tingdong.
Gu Tingdong was a partner at Chengfeng Capital and also Wantang's biggest rival in this industry.
2 years ago, Chengfeng Capital had tried to acquire Huarui Technology, and Wantang had shot them down directly at the board meeting, creating no small amount of bad blood between the two sides. Back then, I had helped Wantang design the anti-takeover plan, which infuriated Gu Tingdong, but my personal relationship with him wasn't bad.
Business is business. Personal is personal.
That's just how the adult world works. I sent Gu Tingdong a WeChat message. Just 4 words. Got time to talk? At 1 in the morning, he actually replied instantly. Mr.
Shen looking for me at this hour?
The sun must be rising in the west.
What's up?
My fingers paused over the screen, and in the end, I only typed 2 words. A deal. He replied with a question mark. I didn't explain further. I stuffed the phone into my pocket, grabbed a random jacket from the closet, took my car keys, and headed out the door. As the elevator descended, I looked at my own face in the mirrored wall, expression calm, eyes fully alert, as if what I was about to do was nothing more than the most ordinary piece of business. The motion sensor lights in the garage flickered on. I pulled open the driver's side door and started the engine. The navigation was set to the Park Hyatt, 15 kilometers away, estimated driving time 25 minutes. I stepped on the accelerator and the car rolled out of the underground garage, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. The car's sound system automatically connected to my phone's Bluetooth and randomly started playing a song. It was Wantang's favorite old song, the one she used to play on repeat in the car, saying it reminded her of when we first met. I reached out and turned off the stereo. The car fell into complete silence, leaving only the low rumble of the engine. I gripped the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the road ahead illuminated by the headlights, and there was only one thought in my mind.
1806.
I wanted to see with my own eyes what my wife was doing inside room 1806. The lobby of the Park Hyatt was brightly lit. At midnight, there were hardly any people around. 2 young women at the front desk were chatting quietly. When they saw me walk, they immediately put on professional smiles. I didn't go to the front desk. I just needed to look like a guest.
Looking for someone at a 5-star hotel in the middle of the night. It was common enough.
I walked straight toward the elevator bank. There was a card access gate blocking the way. I stood off to the side, pulled out my phone, and pretended to reply to messages. After about 2 minutes, a middle-aged man swiped his card and entered the elevator. I followed him in and pressed the button for the 18th floor.
He got off at the 12th floor.
The elevator doors closed and continued ascending. The hallway on the 18th floor was carpeted in dark gray. The recessed ceiling lights were dimmed low. It was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I counted the room numbers one by one as I walked 1801, 1803, 1805. I turned a corner, and at the end of the hallway, the door to room 1806 came into view. The door was closed. A thin line of light seeped out from the gap beneath it. I didn't go any closer. At the other end of the hallway, there was a fire exit door. I pushed it open and stepped into the emergency stairwell. The motion sensor light flickered on and then off again. I stood in the darkness, pulled out my phone, and turned the screen brightness all the way down. Between the fire stairwell and the hotel corridor was a safety door with 2 narrow glass windows. From where I stood, I could see the door of room 1806 perfectly.
0:42 in the morning.
I stood there and waited for 17 minutes. 17 minutes in the darkness felt as long as 17 hours. Thoughts swirled back and forth in my mind, hoping that I was just overthinking, hoping that the WeChat message hadn't been meant for Lucy, hoping that even if she had invited someone over, it was just because she had drunk too much, just chatting, and nothing had happened. Then, from the end of the corridor, came the chime of the elevator arriving.
A person stepped out of the elevator bay.
Lucy.
He wasn't wearing a suit. He had on a casual gray button-down shirt, and his hair looked freshly washed, still slightly damp and loose. His footsteps were quick and direct as he walked straight to the door of room 1806 and knocked 3 times. The rhythm was distinctive, one slow, too fast, like some kind of secret code. My grip on the fire door handle tightened until my knuckles went white. My whole body went rigid, my throat constricted. In that split second, a last shred of hope still lingered in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't in there. Maybe this was all just a coincidence, a misunderstanding, an absurd joke that could be explained away. The door opened. Song Wantang stood inside the doorway, wearing a white hotel bathrobe, her hair loose over her shoulders, and on her face was a smile I didn't recognize.
The hallway light illuminated her profile with stark clarity.
She reached out, grabbed Lucy by the collar of his shirt, and pulled him into the doorframe. The two of them stood right there at the entrance, so close that there was no room left for any kind of denial. Then she rose onto her tiptoes and kissed him. Not a brief, perfunctory, polite kiss. It was a long, heated kiss, charged with unmistakable desire. Lucy's hands wrapped around her waist, pulling her into him. The collar of her bathrobe slipped slightly, revealing her collarbone and a small patch of bare shoulder. Song Wantang did not push him away. She smiled, kissed him back even deeper, and ran her fingers through his hair. I stood behind the safety door, watching everything clearly through that pane of glass. These two, this was not their first time. From the way they embraced to the natural ease of their kiss, every movement told me that this was a man and a woman who had been intimate for a long time. My hands moved faster than my brain. I unlocked my phone, opened the camera, and aimed the lens at that doorway. Even though the glass made the image slightly blurry, both of their faces, their actions, and the timestamp were all clearly visible in the frame. I recorded 33 seconds from their kiss to her laughing and pulling him into the room. The moment the door closed, the timestamp froze at 0:59. The video auto-saved to my photo album. The final frame was frozen on that tightly shut door of room 1806. I put my phone away, turned around and leaned my back against the cold wall. My heartbeat pounded heavily and dully in my chest. It didn't hurt exactly. It was more of a blunt, crushing sensation, as if a massive weight were pressing down on me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them, my gaze fell on the safety door beside me. The door opened outward, the handle was loose and the hydraulic arm was old. Any movement would produce a loud metallic screech. I tested it with a slight push. Sure enough, a creaking sound echoed sharply through the empty stairwell. Then I heard something from the corridor. Not the sound of a door opening, more like footsteps pausing for a moment. I stayed still, pressed against the wall, and waited for about a dozen seconds. Once the surroundings fell completely silent again, I gently pulled the door open, slipped out, and entered the elevator. The elevator descended all the way down. In the mirror, my face was expressionless. My eyes weren't red. My hands weren't shaking. Even my breathing was steady. It wasn't that I wasn't hurting. It was that the hurt hadn't had time to surface before something much stronger pushed it back down. I got home around 1:30 in the morning. The moment I pushed the door open, I saw Wantang's rose-red slippers sitting on the shoe rack in the entryway. The soles had a bit of dust on them. She must have worn them out yesterday and hadn't had time to switch them. On the living room coffee table sat her thermos, half full, the lid printed with her company's logo. Everything was exactly the same as yesterday, the same as the day before, the same as last month. But as I looked at this home, every corner of it felt strange and unfamiliar. I walked into the study, turned on my laptop, and backed up all the videos and chat screenshots from my phone to an encrypted hard drive. 2 copies, one in the cloud, one locally. Then I poured myself a glass of whiskey, no ice, and downed half of it in one gulp. The alcohol burned from my throat down to my stomach, a searing kind of clarity. My phone buzzed, a message from Gu Ting Dong. Mr.
Shen, what exactly is this deal?
You send me half a message in the middle of the night and leave me hanging. Can't sleep now. I replied, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Let's talk in person. He responded instantly.
You don't rest even on Sundays?
Fine.
3 in the afternoon, that coffee shop in China World Tower.
Okay,
I didn't go straight to bed. I sat in the study and pulled up Huarui Technologies' equity structure chart. Starting from the seed round all the way to the equity dilution after last year's Series D, I recalculated every round's financing ratios, valuations, and liquidation preferences. I knew the stuff inside and out. Every single financing plan over the years, I had helped Wantang design.
Every agreement I had reviewed alongside legal.
I knew better than she did exactly how many chips she still held. The data showed that the shares of Huarui Technology under my name amounted to 12.6%. Wantang herself held 32%, the largest shareholder. The employee stock ownership platform accounted for about 10%, and the rest was scattered among several investment institutions. And Gu Tingdong's Chengfeng Capital, ever since the failed acquisition attempt 2 years ago, had been quietly absorbing Huarui shares on the secondary market. They now held roughly 9%. 12.6% plus 9% made 21.6%. With just one more institutional ally, they could stand toe-to-toe with Wantang at a shareholder meeting. Of course, the premise was that I was willing to sell. I looked at the numbers on the screen, finished the remaining whiskey in my glass, then shut down the computer and returned to the bedroom. Wantang's phone was still lying quietly on the bedside table, screen dark. I lay back down on the bed, turned over, and faced away from that phone. That night, I slept surprisingly soundly. Maybe the adrenaline had spiked too high tonight. Once my body cooled down, exhaustion washed over me like a tide. The truth itself, at this moment, no longer felt quite so sharp. Those images had already been stored in my hard drive, reduced to a string of cold, retrievable data. The next morning at 8:30, sunlight streamed through the gap in the curtains and hit my face. I opened my eyes and heard faint noises coming from the kitchen. Song Wantang was back. I lay in bed without moving, listening for about 3 seconds. It was the sound of a frying pan clattering against the stovetop, followed by the sizzle of oil hitting a hot pan. She was frying eggs. In 6 years of marriage, I could count on one hand the number of times Song Wantang had set foot in the kitchen. She was the type of person who thought even making instant noodles was a waste of time. The fact that she was frying eggs this morning, if this had been yesterday, I would have wondered if something had gone wrong at the company, something she needed to discuss with me. But now I knew, she wasn't here to fry eggs. She was here to destroy evidence of her absence last night. I threw off the covers and sat up, rubbing my face. I glanced at myself in the mirror. Aside from the slight dark circles under my eyes, I looked the same as usual. I pulled on a t-shirt, shuffled into my slippers, and walked out of the bedroom. In the kitchen, Song Wantang was wearing my old hoodie, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She was frantically trying to flip the egg in the pan. The edges were already burnt. She clearly had no idea how to control the heat. Hearing footsteps, she turned around and smiled at me. "You're awake. Impersonally cooking today. You'd better finish every bite and give me face." Her tone was light and natural as she said this, her gaze completely open and frank, a spatula still in her hand. In that moment, a bizarre, absurd thought flashed through my mind. Was the woman standing at the door of room 1806 last night in that bathrobe, kissing another man? Was that really her?
But I knew it was.
I walked over, glanced at the charred, blackened egg in the pan, and let out a short laugh. "Your cooking skills haven't improved one bit in 6 years. Oh, don't tear me down." She carried the plate over to me and even planted a kiss on my cheek. The moment her lips touched my skin, my back molars clenched tight. But I didn't flinch. With the same disgusted expression I always wore, I took the plate and sat down at the dining table. Song Wantang served herself a portion as well and sat across from me, scrolling through her phone while eating, occasionally frowning to reply to work messages.
"How was the business dinner last night?"
I asked, cutting into the fried egg, my tone as casual as talking about the weather. "Don't even mention it," she sighed without looking up. "Those investors were impossible. We drank until almost midnight before it finally broke up. I just got a room at the hotel next door and crashed there. Didn't want to come back and wake you."
Got a room.
She used the phrase "got a room."
Not, I stayed at a hotel, but precisely got a room.
I thought of the scene I had witnessed behind the fire door. My knife and fork paused on the plate for a beat, then continued cutting as if nothing had happened.
Which hotel?
I asked. "The Park Hyatt, right next to the office."
Easy walking distance.
Her answer was so smooth, without even a second of hesitation. I didn't ask any more questions. One more question would have felt deliberate, and Song Wantang was far too sharp. She could sense even the slightest abnormality. After breakfast, she changed into a professional outfit, a dark blue fitted suit dress, her hair pinned up, wearing the pearl stud earrings I had given her for her birthday last year. She stood at the entryway, touching up her lipstick in the mirror. She looked capable, elegant, flawless. This was the Song Wantang the outside world saw, a 34-year-old female entrepreneur who had built a company worth $2 billion from nothing. The woman named Businesswoman of the Year by financial magazines. She turned around and said to me, "I might have to work late again tonight. Don't wait up for dinner." I said, "Okay, drive safe." She bent down at the entryway to change her shoes, and her phone slipped out of her coat pocket, landing on the floor with the screen facing up. I walked over to pick it up for her and glanced at the screen. The lock screen was completely clean, not a single message preview. She had turned off notifications. In the past, this was a detail I wouldn't have even noticed. But now I understood. She didn't turn off notifications to focus on work. She did it to prevent certain messages from popping up at the wrong time. I handed the phone to her. She took it, stuffed it into her bag, waved at me, and walked out the door in her stiletto heels. The sound of the elevator doors closing echoed back. I stood in the entryway without moving, and the expression on my face slowly, bit by bit, faded. From the moment she walked out to the moment the elevator closed, the entire process took less than 30 seconds. But the gentle smile on my face was maintained until the very last moment, until I was absolutely certain she wouldn't turn back. I turned, walked back to the living room, picked up my own phone, and found Gu Tingdong's WeChat. 3 o'clock this afternoon.
China World Tower.
See you there. After sending it, I took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and transferred the screenshots and video from the encrypted hard drive into my phone. Then I sat on the sofa and hid every single photo of me and Song Wantang in my phone's album. Not deleted, hidden. These things might come in handy later, but I didn't want to see them right now. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I arrived at the coffee shop in China World Tower first. I chose a booth in the corner, back facing the entrance, facing the entire floor-to-ceiling window. On a weekend, China World Tower wasn't very crowded. The occasional business traveler dragging a suitcase passed through the lobby, and the sound of the espresso machine's steaming milk came in intermittent bursts. At 2:55, Gu Tingdong arrived. He wasn't wearing formal attire today, just a black polo shirt and dark gray trousers. He didn't look like an investor managing billions in capital, more like a middle-aged man out for a weekend stroll. But the moment he sat down, his eyes changed completely. Gu Tingdong had the eyes of a hawk, the outer corners slightly upturned. When he looked at people, there was always a scrutinizing quality to his gaze, as if he were constantly estimating what you were worth.
Mr. Shen, the two of us meeting privately for coffee the last time was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
He picked up his coffee, took a sip, leaned back against the sofa, and crossed his legs.
You mentioned a deal.
What kind of deal?
I didn't beat around the bush.
I opened my phone's photo album, pulled up that equity structure chart, and slid the phone across the table toward him. All of my 12.6% stake in Huarui Technology. Am transferring all of it to you. Gu Tingdong's coffee cup stopped midair. He looked at me, then glanced back down at the equity structure chart on the phone screen, and slowly set his cup down. The shift in his expression was subtle, from cynical indifference to dead seriousness, in less than 2 seconds. All of it? He asked. All of it. Do you know what Huarui's valuation is right now? 12.6%, based on the last round, is worth at least over 200 million. Gu Tingdong leaned forward, both elbows on the table, his voice lowered.
Shen Yan, you're her husband, and you're selling her equity to me her biggest competitor?
Yes.
He stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly laughed. It was the kind of laugh a hunter makes when he smells blood, excited, alert, and tinged with genuine confusion. He was clearly trying to figure out whether I really wanted to sell, or whether I was working with Song Wantang to set a trap for him.
You have to give me a reason, he said.
I smiled too, leaning back against the sofa and speaking unhurriedly.
Miss Gu, the reason isn't important.
What's important is that 12.6% of the equity, plus the 9% you already hold, pull in one more small shareholder decide with you, and at the board meeting, your voting power will be on equal footing with my wife's.
You've been waiting 2 years for this opportunity. Now it's right in front of you. Gu Tingdong was silent for a few seconds, his fingers tapping unconsciously on the tabletop. Then he spoke. What about the transfer price?
You're not going to sell it to me at market price.
20% off market price, I said.
But I have a few conditions. Name them. First, full payment on the day the agreement is signed.
No installments.
Second, until the equity transfer is complete. Not a single word of this can leak. Especially not to Song Wantang. Third, I paused, my eyes locking directly onto his. After the transaction is complete, at the very first board meeting, you will be the one to propose the removal of Song Wantang from her position as CEO. Gu Tingdong's pupils contracted slightly. He leaned back into the sofa, sizing me up with a look that felt like he was seeing me for the first time. It was a long moment before he spoke. Shen Yan, I've met plenty of ruthless people in my life, but someone like you, someone who can sleep in the same bed for 6 years and still hand over the knife with a smile, you're the first. He paused, took a sip of his coffee, then added his tone carrying a note of certainty and probing curiosity.
What exactly did she do?
I didn't answer. I pulled my phone back, pulled up that hotel hallway video, and turned the screen toward him for 10 seconds. Gu Tingdong watched it, then said nothing. He set his coffee cup down and was silent for a long time. Then he lifted his head and extended his hand. Deal. Monday afternoon, 2:55. Huarui Technology Headquarters building. I parked my car on the B2 level of the underground garage and didn't head straight for the elevator. Sitting in the driver's seat, I pulled up the electronic agreement Gu Tingdong had sent over and gave it one final check. I flipped to the last page. The signature line for Gu Tingdong was already signed, and next to it was the official seal of Chengfeng Capital. I tapped the handwriting input, signed Shen Yan on the transfer line, and hit submit. The progress bar on the screen spun twice and then displayed a line of green text. Agreement effective, pending settlement confirmation. 12.6% of the equity. From this moment on, it no longer belonged to me. I looked at that line of green text, and there wasn't the slightest ripple in my heart. Instead, it felt like a weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I pocketed my phone, got out of the car, and pressed the elevator button. The boardroom on the 3rd floor was already nearly full. About a dozen people sat on either side of the long table. Old Joe, the CFO, was fiddling with the projector. The legal director was organizing documents. A few people greeted me, and I nodded back, wearing the same easygoing smile as always. No one knew that just 3 minutes ago, the power structure in this room had already been rewritten by me. Song Wantang hadn't arrived yet. She had a habit of walking in at the very last minute before a meeting started. Right on the dot, without fail, I took my usual seat, the second chair on the left side of the long table, an inconspicuous spot, but one with a clear view of the entire room. 2:58.
My phone buzzed.
A message from Gu Tingdong, funds transferred.
Pleasure doing business.
I opened the banking app and saw several extra zeros in my account balance. At 20% off the market price, this sum was more than enough for everything I planned to do next. 2:59. The boardroom door was pushed open, and Song Wantang walked. She was wearing a white tailored suit dress today, her hair pinned up high, stepping in on her favorite black high heels with red soles. She looked like a drawn blade. Behind her was her assistant, Lucy, in a gray suit, holding a stack of folders with a respectful expression. When the two of them walked in one after the other, my gaze met Lucis for a split second. He quickly looked away and lowered his head to arrange the documents at his seat.
Is everyone here?
Song Wantang sat down at the head of the table and scanned the room. Then let's begin. Old Joe, go over last month's financials first. Old Joe cleared his throat and stood up. The projector displayed sheet after sheet of Huarui Technologies revenue data from the previous month. Revenue up 23% year over year. Gross margin stable. Cash flow healthy. The directors around the table nodded approvingly. The mood was relaxed. Old Joe spoke for about 20 minutes, wrapped up with the overall operations are running smoothly, and sat back down.
Song Wantang flipped a page on her agenda and was about to move on to the next item.
Just then, the boardroom door was knocked on. Everyone turned to look. The door was pushed open from the outside, and in walked Gu Tingdong. He was dressed in a dark blue suit today, wearing a silver gray tie, followed by 2 legal advisors and a notary. The moment the 4 of them appeared at the doorway, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees.
Song Wantang's expression changed instantly, from a smile to something cold and hard.
She looked at Gu Tingdong, her tone hostile.
Mr. Gu, this is a Huarui board meeting.
I don't believe you received an invitation.
Gu Tingdong smiled and walked in unhurriedly, pulling a document out of his briefcase and placing it on the conference table. Ms. Song, according to Article 37 of the company's Articles of Association, any single shareholder holding more than 10% of the shares has the right to attend board meetings and exercise voting rights. My previous stake was 9%, admittedly not enough. But now he paused, his gaze sweeping over everyone in the room. The Huarui Technology shares under my name now exceed 21%. That should make me the second largest shareholder in this room. Silence fell over the boardroom for about 3 seconds, and then it erupted.
What do you mean?
Second largest shareholder?
When did he increase his stake?
Several directors spoke at once. Old Joe practically shot up from his chair. Song Wantang's eyes narrowed. She stared hard at Gu Tingdong, her voice low and tight.
Where did you get those shares? Gu Tingdong didn't answer.
He simply tilted his head slightly, his gaze passing over everyone until it landed on me. I stood up too. The moment I rose, I could feel every pair of eyes in the room shift toward me, including Song Wantang's. Her expression went from confusion to disbelief, and then to something I had never seen on her face before. Something very close to fear.
I transferred them, I said.
My voice wasn't loud, but the boardroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. All 12.6% of my Warui stake transferred in full this afternoon to Mr. Gu Tingdong's Chengfeng capital. Song Wantang just stared at me. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Behind her, Lu Si's face went as white as a sheet of paper. The folder in his hands nearly slipped to the floor. Shen Yan, Song Wantang's voice finally squeezed out, every word sounding like it was ground through her teeth. What are you doing? I didn't answer her. Instead, I glanced down at my phone. A breaking financial news alert had popped up on the screen. Huarui Technology hit by sudden large-scale equity transfer, secondary market share price volatile.
I opened the stock app.
On the chart, Huarui Technology's green candlestick, which had been climbing steadily just 10 minutes ago, now looked like it had been severed in the middle, plunging downward at an almost vertical angle. Down 18 points and still falling. The others in the boardroom were pulling out their phones too. Old Joe glanced at his screen, and the color drained from his face instantly. The legal director stood up, his voice trembling. Ms.
Song, the share price has broken through the warning line.
The exchange might issue an inquiry letter. Song Wantang didn't look at any of them. From beginning to end, she kept her eyes on me. Emotions churned layer by layer in her gaze: shock, fury, incomprehension, and buried deepest of all, a kind of fear I knew all too well. The fear of losing control.
Why?
She asked me. I picked up the water bottle from the table, unscrewed the cap, took a sip, and then stood up to walk toward the door. As I passed by her, I stopped for a moment.
You know perfectly well why.
I pushed the door open and walked out of the boardroom. Behind me came the sound of a chair being violently shoved back, the sharp clicking of high heels pounding against the floor. Someone shouting, "Miss Song," someone else yelling, "Contact the broker now." All the sounds mixed together like a pot of boiling water. I didn't look back at anyone. The elevator doors opened in front of me. I walked in and pressed the button for the ground floor. My phone buzzed. I looked down. 3 characters blazed on the screen. Song Wantang. I didn't pick up. The elevator descended all the way down, the signal cutting in and out. The call disconnected and rang again, disconnected and rang again. By the time I reached the lobby, the missed call count showed 17. The moment I stepped out of the Huarui Technology building, the afternoon sun hit me square in the face, so bright I had to squint. I stood on the front steps and took a deep breath. The air smelled of early summer sycamore blossoms, mixed with the heat waves rising off car exhaust. It was a strange feeling on a scorching 36-degree day. I felt like every pore in my body was exhaling an indescribable sense of satisfaction. My phone buzzed again. The 18th call.
Still Song Wantang.
This time I answered. Her voice came through the receiver, carrying a tremor I had never heard before.
Song Wantang was someone who, in 9 years of building her business, had faced broken capital chains, partner defections, and malicious poaching by competitors.
I had personally watched her get berated by investors in board meetings without so much as blinking. But now her voice was shaking. Not the shake of anger. It was the instinctive reaction of someone standing at the edge of a cliff who suddenly realizes the ground beneath their feet has given way.
Shen Yan, what exactly are you trying to do?
She kept her voice low. I guessed she had retreated to her office.
You sold your shares to Gu Tingdong?
Do you have any idea that has been watching me this whole time? Do you have any idea that his next move is to rally the other shareholders and oust me? Do you even understand what you've done? I held the phone a little farther from my ear, waited for her to finish, and then brought it back.
I know, I said.
I did the math. His current stake plus voting rights, if he pulls in one more small shareholder, will be just enough to knock you off your CEO throne. Silence on the other end. It stretched on for so long that I thought the signal had dropped. Then she laughed. It was a short, soft laugh. Not the kind you make when you find something funny. It was the involuntary sound someone makes when they're trying, in a very short amount of time, to convince themselves that none of this is real.
Because of what?
Her voice suddenly softened, taking on a tentative, pleading undertone.
Shen Yan, because of what exactly?
Tell me. Let's sit down and talk this through properly.
What problem can't be solved?
She was testing me. She wasn't sure how much I actually knew. I leaned against my car door and looked up at the Warui Technology Building. This 32-story glass curtain wall tower, she had bought it 3 years ago. On the day they hung the sign, she had dragged me downstairs to take a photo together, saying this was our empire. That day, she smiled like a little girl, wrapping her arms around my arm and saying we'd buy an even bigger building in the future.
Song Wantang,
I said, my voice perfectly calm. Friday night.
Were you really out drinking with investors?
Silence again on the other end. This silence was different from before. Earlier, she had still been organizing her words, formulating a counter-strategy. This silence was like a wall that had suddenly been erected, airtight, no echo at all. I could even imagine the expression on her face right now. Lips pressed into a thin line. The knuckles of the hand holding her phone white from the grip.
I don't know what you're talking about.
She finally spoke, but the conviction in her voice had already shattered beyond repair.
I hung up.
Then I opened WeChat, found my chat with her, and sent that 33-second video. The thumbnail of the video showed her and Lucy standing outside room 1806, the hallway lights illuminating the contour of her profile with painful clarity.
I didn't attach any text.
Just a video file lying there quietly in our chat window. About 10 seconds later, the other party is typing appeared. Then it disappeared.
Then the other party is typing appeared again.
Then it disappeared again. Back and forth 4 times. Finally, she sent 3 words. Where are you? I didn't reply. I pulled open the car door, started the engine, backed out of the parking space, and merged into the early rush of the evening traffic. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat. The screen lit up, then went dark, lit up again, went dark again.
Her calls came in one after another.
The phone buzzed and vibrated on the seat, making the leather upholstery tremble along with it. I drove looping around the 4th Ring Road again and again. I couldn't say why I was driving in circles. I just felt that sitting in the car, gripping the steering wheel, watching the road stretch endlessly ahead, was a good feeling. For all these years, my life trajectory had been home, office, business dinners, 3 points connected by a single line, like a dog tied to a stake, thinking it was running free when in reality, its radius had never exceeded 10 kilometers. Now the leash was cut. By a little past 7 in the evening, I pulled the car over into a roadside parking spot and glanced at my phone. Missed calls from Song Wantang, 42.
WeChat messages, 26.
I didn't tap in to read them. I only caught a glimpse of the preview for the last one. Xinyan, I'm begging you, come back, let's talk this through properly. Just listen to me explain. I swiped that message away too. Just then my phone rang again. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number.
I picked up.
On the other end was a young man's voice, urgent and panicked.
Mr.
Shen.
Mr.
Shen, this is Lucy.
I leaned back in my seat and the corner of my mouth curved up involuntarily.
Interesting.
The man himself was coming to me.
What is it?
I asked, Miss Shen, can I meet with you? I have something to say to you. In person. His voice sounded like he had been running, breathing unevenly, every word punctuated by a sharp intake of breath. Whatever you have to say, you can say it over the phone. No, it has to be in person. His tone was almost pleading. Please, Mr. Shen, just 10 minutes. Name the place and I'll be there immediately. I thought for a moment and gave him an address.
Not my home.
A private club owned by a buddy of mine. Soundproofed private rooms. No random passersby. This kind of venue was suitable for talking business and for settling scores. Half an hour later, I was sitting on the sofa in the club's private room. In front of me was a freshly brewed pot of Tiguanyin tea. Before the aroma of the tea had even fully dispersed, the door was pushed open. Lucy stood in the doorway, his hair a mess, his tie crooked and hanging down past his collarbone, his forehead covered in fine beads of sweat. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, then rushed over in a few steps, and with a thud, dropped to his knees on the floor in front of me. The steam from the teapot curled upward between us. I looked at Lucy kneeling on the floor, and the first thought that popped into my head was actually about his pants. Those gray dress trousers were clearly not cheap. Kneeling on the marble floor of this club, he'd probably leave marks on them when he got home. Mr.
Shen. He lifted his head, his eyes already red. Please listen to me.
It's not what you think. It's really not what you think. I picked up my teacup, took a sip, and set it down unhurriedly. I said, then tell me.
What do I think it is?
He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if the words had gotten stuck. The way he knelt there was completely different from the energetic and capable business assistant everyone saw at the office, his hair falling messily over half his forehead, his lips trembling, both hands gripping the seams of his pants so hard his knuckles were white. It was Miss Song who initiated everything, he said. The moment those words left his mouth, the air in the private room seemed to freeze for an instant. I had no particular reaction. I just leaned back against the sofa, folded my hands over my knee, and looked at him quietly. He saw my expression and, thinking he hadn't been clear enough, repeated it, louder this time, as if to bolster his own courage. Mr. Shen, it really was Miss Song who initiated everything. It started a year ago when she transferred me to the business assistant position. At first, it was just helping her fend off drinks at social events. Then she started asking me to accompany her on business trips. And later, he swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Later, she started sending me those kinds of messages. I picked up my phone and, without any change in expression, pressed the record button.
Go on.
At the very beginning, I was scared too. I knew she had a family. I knew you were her husband.
I didn't want to get mixed up in this kind of thing.
His speech grew faster and faster, pouring out like garbage being dumped. But she kept saying she could give me a better position, saying she'd bring me into management after the next round of funding, and she kept saying
that her relationship with you was bad, and that divorce was only a matter of time.
Oh? I said, smiling faintly. She said she was going to divorce me?
Yes, she said it many times.
Lucy nodded vigorously, as if nodding hard enough would make his words sound more true. She said you couldn't help her in her career anymore, that you'd been living off her for the past few years, that the 12% stake under your name was all given by her and she could take it back anytime. She also said as long as I behaved, there would be a share of the company for me in the future. Listening to these words, I didn't feel much stirring in my heart.
Would Song Wantang say things like this?
Maybe not. It didn't matter. What mattered was that, at this moment, Lucy, desperate to extricate himself, was pouring every ounce of blame onto the woman he claimed had initiated everything. The value of this recording was far greater than if he had kowtowed 100 times on the floor.
So all those hotels? She was the one who booked them?
I asked. She booked them all. Every room was booked by her. I never once initiated a meeting with her. Lucy grew more frantic, shuffling forward a step. His knees scraped against the marble floor with a harsh sound.
Mr. Shen, you have to believe me.
I really was just...
I just couldn't refuse.
She was the CEO. She controlled my job. What could I do? If I refused her, I'd lose my job. It took me so much effort to get into Huarui.
I didn't dare.
I looked at him, my gaze calm. He was babbling nonstop, trying to paint himself as a Cullian victim coerced by his female boss. In his mind, he was probably thinking that as long as he shoved all the responsibility onto Song Wantang, he could emerge from this whirlpool unscathed. He was too clever. So clever that he forgot the most fundamental thing. I hated Song Wantang. Yes, but that didn't mean I would let him off the hook.
You make a very convincing argument.
I nodded and stopped the recording. He had just let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders visibly relaxing. I opened WeChat, sent the audio file I had just recorded to Song Wantang, and attached a single line. Your assistant says you were the one who initiated everything.
Would you like to listen?
Then I turned my phone screen around to show him.
Lucy's gaze landed on the screen.
The moment he saw that familiar avatar and the words sent, the blood drained from his face in an instant.
White as a freshly painted wall.
Even the color vanished from his lips.
Mr.
Shen, you
sent it to her.
His voice pitched upward. He scrambled up from the floor, his knees wobbling. How could you send it to her? If you do this, She's going to what? I leaned back on the sofa and looked up at him.
Fire you?
Or send someone to deal with you?
Lucy, you should have thought it through before you knelt down.
Every word you said today is going to reach her ears. You chose this path. Now you have to walk it to the end. He stood in the middle of the private room, looking as if all his bones had been pulled out. His shoulders collapsed. His eyes stared blankly at the floor. He was mumbling something unintelligible. After a long moment, he suddenly turned and stumbled toward the door. He yanked it open and fled without looking back. I turned off the recording, tossed my phone onto the sofa, and picked up the pot of tea guanyin to pour myself another cup.
The tea had cooled by half.
It was slightly bitter on the palate, but the sweet aftertaste was still there. Predictably, my phone rang again.
Song Wantang.
This time, I didn't leave her hanging. I answered directly. The moment the call connected, I heard a heavy, ragged breath on the other end, like someone finally gasping for air after being choked.
Shen Yan. Her voice was no longer trembling. It was something that had shattered into fragments and been pieced back together. Do you believe what Lucy said?
Whether I believe it or not isn't important, I said.
What's important is that right now, the second largest shareholder of your company is Gu Tingdong.
Your assistant has already sold you out.
Your stock price will continue to plummet when the market opens tomorrow.
Song Wantang.
Have you ever wondered why every single person around you eventually turns into your enemy?
She didn't speak.
I heard the sound of shattering glass through the phone. I didn't know if she had thrown a cup or smashed something else.
What do you want?
She finally asked that question.
What did I want?
I had thought about this question very clearly over the past 48 hours. What I wanted was not her apology, not her tears, and not her kneeling before me. What I wanted was very simple. I wanted to take away the things she cared about most, one by one. She cared about her equity. I sold it.
She cared about her CEO title.
Gu Tingdong would strip it away from me.
She cared about the loyalty of the people around her. Then I would make sure she heard, with her own ears, how the man she had chosen in her bed had sold her out completely behind her back. Tomorrow, Gu Tingdong will convene an extraordinary general meeting, I said. There is only one item on the agenda, the removal of the current CEO. Care to guess whether anyone will cast a vote in your favor? There was a long silence on the other end, so long that I thought she had hung up. Then I heard her crying, not loud, heaving sobs. It was the kind of seashell fragmented sound that escapes when you're trying desperately to hold it in but can't. I had heard this sound once before. It was the year her father had a heart attack and was hospitalized. She hid in the hospital corridor and cried secretly. Back then, I sat beside her, draped my jacket over her shoulders, and told her, "It's okay. I'm here." Now, the same sound was ringing in my ear, and I found that there was not the slightest ripple in my heart. It was like throwing a stone into a lake and waiting a long time, only to see the water remain perfectly still. "Shen Yan," she said, her voice hoarse, "after all these years as husband and wife, this is how you treat me." I held the phone silent for a few seconds, and then I said, "Song Wantang, that's a question you should be asking yourself."
I hung up.
The private room fell into absolute silence. The air conditioning vent emitted a faint hissing sound. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. Outside, the city had completely submerged into the night. Thousands of lights spread out densely before me. Behind every light was a story. Someone was embracing, someone was saying goodbye, someone was betraying, and someone was exacting revenge. I added Song Wantang's number to my phone's blacklist, then dialed Gu Tingdong. He picked up after 2 rings. "Mr. Shen, today's show, absolutely brilliant." Gu Tingdong's voice carried a clear smile. The stock dropped 23 points. I've already had my people sweeping up shares at the bottom. Right now, you're the single biggest contributor to Arua's stock crash. Skip the flattery, I said, standing at the window and gazing at the neon-lit sea in the distance. Tomorrow's shareholder meeting.
How are you planning to fight it?
I've already pulled in 2 smaller shareholders. Combined voting rights will exceed 51%. Gu Tingdong's tone suddenly turned businesslike. "Tomorrow morning at 10.
Come watch the show."
I said okay, then hung up. Outside the window, the city was ablaze with lights. I stood in front of the glass and looked at my own reflection.
Shen Yan, 33 years old.
The man everyone called the man behind Song Wantang. Tomorrow he would personally push his wife off the CEO throne. My phone buzzed again. Not a call.
A WeChat message.
The sender was a name I hadn't been in contact with for a long time. Xu Nian, my college senior, now a partner at Shengheng Capital. Her message was just one line. "I heard you've fallen out with Song Wantang. I have a project I want to pull you into." I looked at this message and smiled. There were plenty of people in this world with a keen sense of smell. The first to scent blood was Gu Tingdong. The second was Xu Nian. But it didn't matter. The more, the better. The murkier the waters, the easier it would be for me to seize what I really wanted. I replied with 3 words, "See you tomorrow." Gu Tingdong's extraordinary general meeting went beautifully. Word was that Song Wantang had slammed the table, smashed a cup, and even tried to use a veto power to forcibly halt the vote. But the company's articles of association were clear. Removing a CEO required the approval of over 2/3 of the voting rights held by shareholders present. Gu Tingdong had secured 67%. Her veto was meaningless. At 2:17 in the afternoon, financial media outlets blasted out breaking news: Huarui Technology founder Song Wantang ousted as CEO by the board. Chengfeng Capital partner Gu Tingdong appointed interim chairman. Once the news broke, the stock fell another 9 points. Market value had evaporated by over 30%. I sat in my newly rented office, looking at a photo on my phone of Song Wantang surrounded by reporters at the entrance of the Huarui building. I swiped past it without any expression. This office wasn't large, just over 200 square meters, on the 37th floor of China World Tower, Phase 3, the window facing directly onto Chang'an Avenue. The rent wasn't cheap, but I liked this view. Standing here and looking down, the traffic flowed like a river, pedestrians like ants. The entire city was underfoot. The new company I had registered for myself was called Yanxi Capital, with registered capital of 50 million, fully paid in. The business scope covered technology investment, corporate mergers and acquisitions, and core IP acquisitions.
The money came from the cashed-out equity transfer proceeds.
After taxes, there was still plenty left, more than enough for what I was going to do next. There was a knock on the glass door of my office. My assistant, Meng Yao, poked her head. She was someone I had poached from an old colleague at my previous investment bank, 27 years old, efficient and tight-lipped.
Mr.
Shen, the 3 R&D team leads you asked for, are here.
Send them in.
The door was pushed open and 3 people walked in. 2 men and 1 woman. The one in the lead was a middle-aged man around 40 wearing silver-rimmed glasses, his hair slightly graying, dressed in a faded plaid shirt. His name was Fang Jie, Senior Director of Huarui Technologies R&D Department 1. In his hands were the company's most core AI algorithm patents. The 2 following behind him were Old Peng, the architect from R&D Department 2, and Sister Wen, the head of the testing team. These 3 people together represented half of Huarui Technologies' entire R&D backbone. Please have a seat. I gestured toward the sofa opposite me. Fang Zhe sat down, adjusted his glasses, his expression somewhat complicated. He had been at Huarui for 7 years, personally poached by Song Wantang from a major tech firm, one of the company's founding employees. I poured him a cup of tea. He took it but didn't drink, just turning the cup restlessly in his hands.
Mr.
Shen, to be honest, when I saw the salary figure you sent me, I looked at it several times, thinking you'd accidentally added an extra 0.
Fang Jie spoke first, his tone carrying the directness characteristic of technical people. I smiled, picked up 3 contracts from the table, and handed them over. No extra 0. Annual salary is double what you're earning now.
Signing bonus is separate.
Project bonuses paid quarterly. Option pool of 15%, which begins vesting in batches after 1 year of employment. Old Peng picked up the contract and flipped through it, his eyes widening more and more. Sister Wen drew a sharp breath and looked up at me, her lips moving as if she found the numbers too unbelievable.
Mr.
Shen, I don't quite understand. Fang Jie set the contract down and looked me in the eye. The terms you're offering are indeed tempting.
But what makes you think we'd leave Huarui?
Most of us have been here for over 5 years.
We have feelings for this company.
And Ms.
Song.
She might have a temper, but she has never been stingy about R&D investment. She gave us the best equipment, the best teams. You're asking us to just walk away.
Song Wantang is no longer the CEO. I cut him off, my tone very calm.
You all should have seen the news this afternoon. The board removed her. Gu Tingdong is calling the shots now. Gu Tingdong is a capital man.
Do you think he's going to pour money into R&D without regard for cost like Song Wantang did?
The first thing he'll do is slash budgets, compress R&D cycles, and chase short-term financial statements. The 3 of you have been with my wife for years. You know better than I do how much longer Huarui can hold on. Fang Jie fell silent. Old Peng and Sister Wen exchanged glances, neither speaking. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, my back to them, continuing, Yanxi Capital is a new company. There is over 200 million in cash sitting in the accounts. No historical baggage, no IPO pressure.
What I want to build is the underlying architecture for next-generation smart terminals.
The direction is largely consistent with the projects you're currently developing, but my resources are more concentrated. Decision-making is faster.
When you come over, you're not starting from scratch. You're taking over teams directly.
Doubling your salary is just a welcoming gift. The real value is in the options. You know better than I do that for technical people, choosing the right platform is more important than choosing the right boss. Behind me there was silence for about 10 seconds. Then I heard the sound of contract pages flipping, the scratching of pen on paper.
Fang just signed.
Old Peng and Sister Wen signed as well. I turned around and watched the 3 signed contracts lying neatly on the coffee table. A smile finally tugged at the corner of my mouth. This deal, from start to finish, had only taken me 3 days. 3 days ago, Huarui Technologies' R&D system was as solid as a fortress. 3 days later, the 3 most core team leads had all been packed up and taken away by me.
Welcome to Yanxi Capital.
I extended my hand and shook each of theirs. When Fang Zhe shook my hand, he suddenly asked, Mr. Shen, does Miss
Song know?
I withdrew my hand, picked up my teacup from the table, and took a sip. Unhurriedly, I said, she will. The news spread even faster than I had anticipated. That very evening, Huarui Technologies' internal OA system exploded. Fang Jie, old Pang and sister Wen had all submitted their resignation letters at the same time, followed by over a dozen key engineers under them. R&D departments 1 and 2 were practically gutted overnight. What remained were either green newcomers or seasoned veterans already looking for their next move. At around 11 o'clock that night, my WeChat was bombarded by one person. Not Song Wantang. It was her father, Song Boyuan. Song Boyuan was 68 years old. But before retirement, he had been a figure of some prominence within the system. The startup capital for Song Wantang's business had come from him. The old man had been strong-willed his entire life. What he valued most was face and legacy. His daughter's company had lost 70% of its market value, and now even the R&D team had been gutted from under her. To him, this wasn't just about money. It was about the foundation being ripped out. He sent me over a dozen WeChat messages, a mix of voice and text, his tone ranging from questioning to fury to pleading. I didn't finish listening to the last voice message. I only caught the first half. He said, Shen Yan, you married my daughter, and now you're destroying her life. I listened, put the phone down, and didn't reply. At 2 in the morning, Song Boyuan was rushed to the hospital. A heart attack. He was in emergency surgery for 6 hours. The news was sent to me by Song Wantang's driver, Old Zhao. He said the old man had been watching the news at home and found out that the R&D team had been poached en masse. He clutched his chest and collapsed on the spot. By the time he reached the emergency room at Peking Union Medical College Hospital, he was already unconscious. I received the message while sitting in my new office, still working late. When I saw the word heart attack, I gripped my phone and was silent for nearly a full minute. Song Boyuan, I had been married to Song Wantang for 6 years. He had been neither particularly good nor bad to me. Deep down, he looked down on people like me who came from investment banking backgrounds, thinking we were too wild, not grounded enough. But he never directly made things difficult for me. Every Chinese New Year, he would even give me a thick red envelope and say, Little Shen, you've worked hard. Taking care of Wantang isn't easy. I put on my jacket, went downstairs, and drove to the hospital. Outside the ICU, Song Wantang was sitting on a plastic chair in the corridor. Her hair was disheveled, the makeup on her face streaked with tear tracks, one line white, one line black. She was still wearing the same white tailored suit dress from the daytime. There was a visible gray smudge on her knee, though I couldn't tell where she had brushed against something. Her head was bowed, her hands clasped together in her lap, her fingers twisting restlessly. Hearing footsteps, she lifted her head. The moment she saw it was me. A cascade of emotions flashed through her eyes, first surprise, then anger, then grievance, and finally all of it melting into something unidentifiable, like a drowning person pulled ashore, who sees a ship approaching in the distance, knowing full well that the ship might not be coming to save her, but still can't help raising a hand.
What are you doing here?
Her voice was hoarse, rough as sandpaper. How is the old man? I stood 3 steps away from her, not sitting down. He was resuscitated, still under observation. As she finished saying this, she suddenly covered her face, her shoulders trembling violently. She made no sound, but tears seeped through her fingers, dripping one by one onto her knees. After a long while, she lowered her hands and looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Shen Yan, my father almost died. Are you satisfied now? I leaned against the corridor wall, hands in my pockets, and said nothing.
Say something.
She suddenly stood up, took 2 steps toward me, and raised her hand as if to shove me, but her hand froze in midair. Her lips quivered, her eyes bloodshot.
You sold your shares to Gu Tingdong.
You let him remove me.
You poached my R&D team?
You've driven my father into the ICU. Shen Yan, what more do you want?
Do you want to see me dead before you're satisfied?
At the nurse's station down the corridor, someone glanced our way. I reached out, took hold of the wrist she had raised in the air, and gently lowered it.
Song Wantang.
I did all those things, that's true. But you're wrong about one thing. My voice was very calm.
Your father lying here, it wasn't me who put him here.
It was you. Her pupils contracted sharply. If you hadn't worn that bikini and sent the photo to Lu Tiai along with the room number, if you hadn't been kissing him in that hotel hallway, I said word by word, I wouldn't have sold my shares.
Gu Tingdong wouldn't have entered the board.
The R&D team wouldn't have left.
And your father wouldn't have watched the news and had a heart attack?
Song Wantang. The starting point of all of this was not me. She stumbled backward, her back hitting the wall, and slid down onto the chair as if all the strength had been drained from her body. She lowered her head, ran both hands through her hair, and her voice came out muffled.
I know I was wrong.
But Shen Yan, 6 years of marriage, can't you leave me even a shred of mercy?
The corridor was deathly quiet. From far away, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor drifted over. I looked at the top of her head and said, "When you cheated back then, did you leave any mercy for me?"
She didn't answer.
I stood in the corridor for about 5 minutes, then finally turned and walked away. As I reached the elevator, her voice came from behind me, thick with tears and the slur of alcohol. She had somehow found a small bottle of white liquor and had already drunk more than half. The smell of alcohol mixed with the scent of tears. She looked utterly disheveled, nothing like herself. "Shen Yan, just let me go, okay?" She stumbled to the elevator, grabbing my sleeve. "Give me back my R&D team. The company is almost dismantled by Gu Tingdong."
I got notice today. The forced acquisition process starts next week.
Huarui is about to be swallowed whole by Chengfeng Capital. That's the company I built with my own hands. That's 9 years of my blood and sweat. If you make me watch it disappear, you might as well just stab me. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened to an empty car. I stepped in, turned around, and looked at the woman outside, so drunk she could barely stand.
"Song Wantang, the company you built, your blood and sweat, everything you have," I said.
When you took off your clothes back then, did you think about any of these things?
The elevator door slowly closed, and her face disappeared behind the metal panels.
3 months later,
The new product launch event for Yanxi Capital was held in the largest ballroom of the China World Summit wing. A lot had happened in those 3 months.
Huarui Technology had been forcibly acquired by Chengfeng Capital.
At the last moment, Song Wantang had tried to launch a management buyout, but the funding gap was too large. Not a single bank was willing to loan her money. In the end, Gu Tingdong completed a full acquisition at a price 30% below valuation. Huarui Technology was delisted from the Nasdaq and absorbed into the Chengfeng system. Song Wantang left with nothing but a severance package, vanishing from everyone's sight. On my side, Yanxi Capital was running even more smoothly than I had imagined. Fang Zhe and his R&D team had only needed less than 3 months to get the underlying architecture for the next generation smart terminal up and running. Orders from several major manufacturers were already lined up through next year. The company's valuation had gone from 0 to 1 billion in just 90 days. On the day of the launch event, I was dressed in a tailored dark gray suit, standing backstage. Meng Yao handed me a bottle of water and said quietly, "Mr. Shen, over 300 people are here today. The media area is packed."
The financial channel is live streaming.
I nodded, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip.
The lights dimmed.
A spotlight tracked me as I walked onto the stage. The audience's applause surged up like a dark tide. I stood under the spotlight, adjusted my earpiece, and began the speech I had been preparing for 3 months. The product demo went smoothly. Fang Zhe took the stage to explain the technical architecture. Representatives from partner companies also gave their remarks. The final segment of the launch event was the headline announcement. I stood at center stage, picked up the remote, and pressed a button. On the massive screen behind me, a line of text appeared. Yanxi Capital formally announces full acquisition of the Huarui Technology brand and core IPs. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Flashbulbs went off frantically. The shutter clicks fast and furious like a rainstorm pounding on a tin roof.
Reporters shot to their feet.
Investors in the front row whispered urgently among themselves. Someone shouted, "Mr. Shen, wasn't Huarui already acquired by Chengfeng?" I smiled and said into the microphone what Chengfeng Capital acquired was the shell of Huarui Technology, the listed entity and its distribution network. What Yanxi Capital is acquiring today is the Huarui Technology brand trademark and all core technology patents. In other words, from today onward, the Huarui brand belongs to me. The audience exploded. Just then, my gaze swept over the farthest corner on the left side of the room. A woman was sitting there, wearing a plain black dress, her hair casually tied back, no makeup on her face. She looked so plain she was almost unrecognizable. Her eyes were fixed on me on the stage, her lips slightly parted, the water bottle in her hand crushed out of shape.
Song Wantang.
I didn't know how she had gotten in. Maybe her name was on the media invite list. Maybe she had slipped in among the crowd unnoticed. But at this very moment, she was sitting right there, like an old relic that everyone had forgotten. I looked at her, paused for 2 seconds, then averted my gaze and spoke the final line of the launch event into the microphone.
I want to thank Ms.
Song Wantang, the founder of Huarui Technology, for laying the foundation of this brand. From today on, The history of Huarui will be written by Yanxi.
The applause from the audience was deafening.
Song Wantang slumped back in her chair. The crumpled water bottle slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a thud, water spilling from the opening, spreading across the floor, soaking the unremarkable flats she was wearing. A photographer next to her, carrying his equipment, pushed forward eagerly, his elbow bumping her shoulder. She lurched sideways, almost sliding off the chair, but no one noticed her. 3 years ago, she was the focal point of this industry, a guest of honor at every major summit, the cover figure for financial magazines. Today, in the same ballroom, the spotlight was shining on someone else and she sat in the corner chair, her makeup ruined, with no one even offering her a tissue. After the launch event, I was in the VIP lounge exchanging pleasantries with a few investors. Meng Yao pushed the door open, leaned close to my ear, and said, "Mr.
Shen, there's a miss.
Song outside who wants to see you."
I won't see her.
Meng Yao nodded, turned and left. I continued chatting with the investors, discussing orders for the new season and overseas market expansion plans, talking about Yanxi Capital's next acquisition targets. Throughout the whole process, I didn't let my focus wander. I didn't spare a single extra glance toward the door. After the launch event, another 4 months or so passed. Yanxi Capital's business had fully gotten on track, and the integration work for the brand acquisition was completely finished. I had people remove Huari's old logo from all products and replace it with Yanxi's new insignia. At the end of November, the first snow of winter fell in Beijing. The air was brittle with cold. A little past 9 in the evening, I finished my last conference call and drove home. Passing by an auxiliary road off the East 4th Ring Road, I spotted a 24-hour convenience store. Its harsh white fluorescent lights were glaringly bright in the dark night. I pulled the car over, not because I wanted to buy anything, the tissues in the car had run out, and I figured I'd grab a couple of packs. Pushing open the convenience store's glass door, I was hit by a wave of warm air and the smell of odor. There were hardly any customers inside. A young guy behind the cash register was yawning. The aisles were empty. I grabbed a pack of tissues and headed for the register. Then I stopped in my tracks.
Next to the beverage cooler, someone was crouched down.
She was wearing the convenience store's standard dark blue uniform vest, her hair clipped back with a black hairpin. She was on her tiptoes, placing bottles of mineral water onto the shelf one by one. Her movements were slow. She paused to catch her breath after every bottle, her knees pressing into the floor, her pants coated with a thin layer of dust. When she turned to grab the next case of water, her profile was exposed directly under the fluorescent light.
Song Wantang.
Her face was much thinner, the contours of her cheekbones sharply defined. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes were clearly visible without the cover of makeup. Her lips were dry and chapped. There was a small bruise on her forehead. I couldn't tell where she had bumped it. Her hands were completely different from before. Those hands, which once had only been used for signing documents and raising champagne glasses, were now lifting a case of 24 bottles of mineral water. 2 band-aids were stuck on her fingers, and there was grime embedded in her nail beds that wouldn't wash out.
Sister Song, once you finish stocking that water, you can clock out. The guy at the register called out to her.
Don't forget to punch your card.
Okay, almost done.
She responded.
Her voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet of the convenience store, I heard every word clearly. She finished moving the last bottle of water, braced herself against the shelf, and stood up. Her knees must have gone numb from kneeling. She winced as she straightened. Then she dusted off her uniform pants, turned around, and headed toward the register. She took 3 steps and then she saw me. She just stopped right there, in the narrow space between the potato chip aisle and the beverage cooler, holding an empty cardboard box she had just broken down. The convenience store's fluorescent lights illuminated her face mercilessly, leaving not a single shadow. Every pore, every fine line was exposed in stark clarity under the white light. Her mouth opened and closed and opened. In the end, no sound came out. I looked at her for about 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, countless images flashed through my mind. 6 years ago at our wedding, her smiling at me in her white wedding dress. The day she got her first round of funding, hugging me and spinning around the living room. Standing outside room 1806, rising on her tiptoes to kiss Lucy. In the ICU corridor, grabbing my sleeve, crying, begging me. Then all those images vanished, like snow melting into water, not leaving behind so much as a ripple. I pulled my gaze away, walked up to the register, and placed the pack of tissues on the counter. The cashier scanned it and said $8.50.
I paid with my phone.
Just as I turned to leave, Song Wantang suddenly spoke.
Shen Yan.
Her voice was very soft, carrying a tentative, uncertain, trailing note, as if she regretted saying my name the moment it left her mouth. I stopped, turned back, and looked at her. She stood next to the shelf, both hands twisting the hem of her uniform vest. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just tugged at the corner of her mouth into a strained expression that barely qualified as a smile.
She probably wanted to ask if I was doing well.
She probably wanted to say long time no see.
She probably wanted to explain something, or salvage something. But in the end, none of those words came out. I didn't wait for her to finish. I pushed open the glass door, and the cold November wind rushed in. The automatic door chimed behind me and slowly slid shut. The convenience store's white fluorescent light, through a pane of glass, blurred her silhouette into an indistinct outline. I walked to the curb, opened the car door, and got in. In the passenger seat sat someone Sunyan. She was wearing a camel-colored coat today, her hair loose over her shoulders, scrolling through her phone with her head down. After the launch event, I had been spending more and more time with Shunyan. Tonight, we had plans to go to a private cinema, owned by her friend. "Did you get the tissues?" she asked without looking up. I handed her the tissues and started the engine. Shunyan tore open the pack, wiped her hands, and glanced in the direction of the convenience store. Casually, she remarked, "There is a woman in there. She seems to have been staring at us." I straightened the steering wheel, stepped on the accelerator, and the car pulled smoothly into the lane. In the rearview mirror, the white light of the convenience store grew smaller and smaller, until it became a tiny dot in the distance, melting into the city's myriad lights. "Don't know her," I said. "Let's go."
Next stop.
The car merged into the flow of traffic. The sound system automatically connected to Bluetooth. This time, I didn't turn off the music. A random song started playing, a new tune I hadn't heard before. The melody was light and brisk, telling a story about starting over. The road stretched out before me. The city was still the same city. It was just that the man sitting in the car was no longer the same person he had been 4 months ago. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Meng Yao. "Mr.
Shen, the agenda for tomorrow morning's 9 o'clock board meeting has been sent to your email.
The project proposal for the new initiative is attached as well." I typed back a single word one-handed. "Okay." Then I turned off the phone screen, gripped the steering wheel tighter, pressed the accelerator, and sped toward the brightly lit highway stretching ahead.